Good morning, my name is James Chavis, and I'm out here giving you an overview of the area that I grew up all my life here in Durham, North Carolina. This area is known as North Durham, where I was originally born, right over beyond those bushes. And there is where my grandmother stayed on one side, which is called Lee Street, and my mother stayed on the other side of the house. My family grew up in all this area here in northeast central Durham. I will be talking about some of the things that I want you all to know about this area and about me. As I stand right here and begin, this used to be a white man's store called Harvey grocery store. And beside Harvey, he had a wife, Mrs. Harvey, who had a collection that she sold of whatnots, which was crystal whatnots. She had on the other side of this, the store was right here. Hers was a little further up. Miss Harvey only sold her crystals to white folks, but Mr. Harvey had an extra door cut out inside the store. So I could tell when he done something or she done something wrong with him. He would unlock the door and have me to go inside and disturb her. What I would do is go inside, make her show me her crystal by taking them out the case, and she'd be hollering, calling Harvey to come and get me out of that store, her side of the store, knowing that I was not supposed to be over there. But I would not leave until she take a crystal out the cabinet, sit it on top of the cabinet, and then she said, okay, I'll show it to you. Then she said, but you can't touch it. I said, oh no, I can't leave until I touch it. So she'll finally decide to let me touch it. Then she said, okay, you can go. I said, no, I see one more. So I would go and get another one, make her take it out the cabinet, and I would touch it. Then I would leave. Mr. Harvey would give me a bag and allow me to go in the store and get all the candy and potato chips and stuff that I wanted and take home with me. Now we have another store as I point to my left that was also run by whites. On one side, which is on the far left on this side, was the shoemaker with Mr. Cash. And on the other side, his wife was Miss Cash, and she had the grocery store. Now you come back down, right here on the right over here, that was Johnson Forestry. That were mostly black folks that did the laundry, worked in the back. I grew up from that area, from this area here, all the way back, and that's known as Corporation Street as you go right back here. Blacks lived all the way back there. The alley right over here, across from Johnson Forestry, where I'm pointing at right now, that was known as Kelly's Alley. In my later years, I found out that they had the sewage pipe. Well, that sewage pipe is what we crossed over and played on. Did not know. They did not educate us black kids about the creeks, about the sewage line, or any of these things when we was growing up. We learned how to walk that pipe, because when it rained, we could not come through Roxbury Street behind these houses and get over to the side of where my grandma stayed. We had to walk the sewage pipeline. Okay, as you see behind me is a sign saying Royal Ice Cream. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s civil rights movement here in Durham. As many of you may think or know or heard, that the first sit-in was done in Greensboro, North Carolina. No, it was not. Found out lately in my years that Royal Ice Cream had the first sit-in here in Durham, North Carolina. And that's why you hear so many people says Durham was the first place to have a sit-in with the Royal Ice Cream. Well, as I grew up to tell you, my part is that yes, Royal Ice Cream was a segregated store, an ice cream parlor. And as I said, it was segregated because in the front, as you look on Roxbury Street, that was the entrance right there at the pole, how white folks went in that area. Only, whites only. We'll come back down a little bit to your left of that. There was some staircase in the back part where we black folks had to come. On our side of Royal Ice Cream, of the divided wall, was the black section. We did not have any sit-in stools or tables to sit in. We had to stand, order, and leave. On the white side, on the other side, coming off on Roxbury Street, part of the Dowd, they had sit-in counters and tables and things sitting out. Later on, after they took down the wall, they took out the tables and chairs as well, so that it's only been a counter that you walk up to, and the majority of folks working that steel was white folks. No blacks worked in the counter, behind the counter, collecting any money. I was known as the Troublemaker for all these areas that was divided as colored and white. There were 3 stores around here I agitated. There was Harvey, Miss Cash, and the Royal Ice Cream. So I used to sometimes not go up the back way of the staircase and go in the colored section. I go around into the white section. And there'd be some customers in there, white customers, and they'd be jumping back, and the owner, which my aunt worked for in their home, would come out there and holler and call me by my name, James. Come on, James, come on out, come on out, come on out. I said, wait a minute, I need to order something. And he said, come on out, I'll get you. I said, no. He said, you come on out now, you won't have to pay for it. So I would go out and stand right outside and make him bring me whatever I want, and I didn't pay for it. And I go right down the street eating ice cream and stuff when I didn't have the money, or I did have the money, because just to agitate them, and they know it. And he would tell my aunt, and my aunt would say, well, that's him. As you see, the church behind me is the church I grew up in, a Union Baptist Church. The Union Baptist Church was known as the Civil Rights Movement Hall of Fame, as we call it now, some of us always call it, because that's where we held our meetings. And our pastor then is known as Dr. Grady Demon Davis, who's the pastor during this great civil rights movement time. Some have heard of him and some have not. I grew up under his leadership as being a civil rights worker. And how Union Baptist Church got here, someone does not know the history, and this is another thing that I wish our folks would get involved, is how some of these black churches got started. Jews purchased this church for us, was unknown to the white man at that store, that Keeler store. And when Keelers found out that a black church was coming here, they said that he raised holy, but there's nothing he could do about it. Well, they picket Keeler grocery store when I was a child. And one of the reasons they was picking at Keeler with the grocery store was that he would not hire any blacks to work at the cash register. He would not allow any blacks to work back there at the meat counters. Only thing they could do was stock the stores and cut the meat and pass it on. So as you look here and see this sidewalk here, that's where our picket line used to be. So going to school, I would get up early and help them picket in the morning. And in the evenings, when I got out of school, I would stop back and pick up and carry signs. So yes, I did carry signs on this street when I was a young kid. Yes, I walked the picket lines from this end to that end during the civil rights. Good morning. We're going to start at Goose Creek Tour that I started back in 2 years ago. And this is where the creek started. We did this tour starting from Maple to Liberty, and we're going to carry on throughout. As you see to my left, this is a creek that's been here ever since I've been a child. This house, which we knew down here, was a floodplain area, and there was no house. And that's been over 65 years, no house been on this lot. But all of a sudden, the city allowed them to build this house. And in building this house upon this creek, which we've known this area over here to be a floodplain. And as you may see, the gutters and the downpour from the rain when it comes, the spouts are pointing straight towards the street. And that's where all the water comes from. And if you notice throughout when there's a big rain, this creek becomes flooded, where the soil used to attain the water. And not only that, the water used to go down here in this drench and go through here. It no longer does that because the house has been replacing the soil to absorb the water. And then we will go to our next area. Now we're on starting about behind me is called Goose Creek area. This creek goes from one end of what I'm gonna give you the main street, one end of High Park, all the way down to the other end to Drew, where we will be going. Okay, this is a dead end street called Elmore. I used to play in this creek when I was a child. Here, when it did not rain, we could go across this creek and get on the other side of the street and go through these bushes. If it rained, before they put these houses here, we used to cut through these trees and go on the other side. The street was called Juniper Street. And we could take Juniper Street and go either up to anywhere else we wanted to go. As you'll see that the creek, as I see it, taking the main street, which is High Park, goes from High Park at this end, Juniper, and to all the way to Drew Street. And it will continue from there, going all the way out. If you ever heard of Bragtown, it goes all the way out to Bragtown to an area they call Beaver Creek. That's where the creek ends, where we know it. Well, the erosion has came all the way up to here. Erosion has come all the way up here. Water erosion is where is. But the creek used to be from about right there where you see that grass growing a little bit where the trees are falling. The creek used to come all the way across there. But you see how far it done taken over part of this land through the erosion. And we used to cross here and go straight through here. And if you could see through those trees right there, that used to be the pathway and the street coming right back on the other side. And you'll see that when we go in our other area of its tour. This is known as Drew Street, okay? The creek runs from that part, but it started all the way back from the beginning when we first started this. As you see here, this rail was not here when I was growing up. This rail was not here, nor this brick wall, nor the park behind me, nor the fence. So we could come into this creek anytime we wanted to. From here, we walked up and down this creek, played in this creek. Only thing we know to look for in this creek when the water was low or dried up was tadpoles. We didn't know anything else from this water but for tadpoles. And not only that, we did not know the safety of this water. We didn't know what this water could do to us harmfully with different bacteria that we're finding out now that can come from this creek. This was not, if you look at this pavement, when I grew up, this was not pavement. This was dirt. And as this was dirt, as I turn around to look to my right as far as I can up this hill, all the way up that hill is where I grew up at 1201 Drew Street. And I walked all the way up this way to school, crossed this railroad track, going around to East End School. In the evenings, we played in this creek when we got out of school and got in trouble. Or springtime or summertime, we played in this creek going from one end to this creek here, always going across to the other end. This was not a park when I grew up. It was just all flat, known as flood zone area, where nothing could grow or nothing could be built. And as you've seen, as I stepped back, and we came through where houses were stored, where we cut through to come to across this creek to get on the other side. We walked this street up and down. There was no houses over here as it is now. These apartments was not here, but there were houses as you see in the sidewalk going up that hill. This was the last street in this area to be paved after 1962. So this street was not paved till after 1962. And the railroad tracks go from left to right. That's where we used to go and pick up coal from the train the coal would fall off the train tracks onto the side of the road. I had to take my little red wagon, come all the way up from that hill, all the way down here, have a bag sitting in my wagon, and we collected coal going down the railroad track to make fire, to put in our stove at night. Elmo Street, which we was on beforehand, showing you the creek, is the wood that we used to come through here to get on Juniper Street. Okay, this is Juniper, that's Calvin. Now this area right here now is known as Albright Community Park. It once was Albright Garden. Now they done changed it to Albright Community Park. It runs all the way up here to the creek, Goose Creek, right here, going right down, same area from Juniper down to Drew Street, on beyond. How we had to go when it rained, we came through here to get on Juniper, to go up here, or if we could cross from Elmo's and the other streets over there to get on Granby or Calvin to cut up and go another way, we would cross this creek that's still coming across here. This is the entrance to our East End School Park. We used to come down across the railroad track, leaving our house on Drew Street, taking the railroad track and coming down this way, or taking the streetway, Juniper Way, and coming down here. There used to be three houses in here, two on this side and one on this side. As we go further, as you can see, going across there, there's a bridge that we had to cross, and there's a creek underneath there. And yes, we did go in and out that creek to play. Now, the importance that I found out about this creek later on, I knew about it, but I never knew that it ran into Goose Creek. As we go down further down this way, you will see that the creek came from a street that we used to call Canal Street. This creek ran in from Canal Street all the way down this way and all the way down to Goose Creek. And that's where we didn't know anything about it. And the only thing we know that we just come across this pathway with the bridge is like it was now, and we just cross over or either go down there and play in the creek and come up from either areas of this creek. We played up and down here. But this creek started from a street called Canal Street right here in Durham. And what do you mean by a canal? That was a street split in half with canal running right straight down it, and they named the street Canal. Houses was on one side, houses on the other side. And to cross that canal, you had to come to the end of the street if it was raining, like it's been raining now, and the water sits up high. You couldn't go through the canal to get on the other side. You had to go to one of the end of the streets that was paved and come across it to get on and go on the other side. As I look to my right, this open field right here was our baseball field. And we used to have a women's baseball team, a ladies, girls baseball team, practice over here during the spring of the year, and they had their games. Across the street, as you see this center mile block, that was our E.D. Mickles Recreation Center. And that's where they housed us up to come and play games and different things, activities in there. And the most important thing about that was that E.D. Mickles Recreation Center was run by people in the community. They would hire people in the community to run that center and set up things, games and different things for us. And as you look to my left, you see now it's a basketball court out here, but there were no basketball court on this side. Back there further back was where our swings, sliding board, and merry-go-round used to be, right back up in there. And as you see, that building, if you kind of see to your far up left, that building has been sitting there, and that's where we used to go and sit. You could go up there and sit down. It wasn't as fancy as it is now, but they had a little sitting area up there for us. This is the end of our tour of the Goose Creek, but this is not the end of Goose Creek. As you notice, I started on Maple Street, came all the way down to Drew Street, came all the way around to Calvin, came all the way around to Juniper, came all the way around East End Park, all the way right around to here, which is on Liberty Street. This Goose Creek runs from that end all the way back, and we played from that end to all the way back. But one of the unique things about this is that this creek and this area was not for black folks. This was a white folks area. Long Meadow Park, which is now mixed with everyone, was a white park. And the swimming pool, only white folks could come to it. And we couldn't come to it because we was black, and the only park we had was way across town on the other end of Durham. So as you see, Goose Creek comes all the way out here, goes on the other path of our school over here, further beyond that. And as this creek ends up, it ends up at what we call the dam, the Beaver Dam behind the old Winn-Dixie building. It's called Beaver Dam, and one day I hope we can get a chance to go out there and see what that creek is all about. Once again, my name is James Chavis. I started this tour with Elevate Creek 2 years ago. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you love what we have shown you today as being a part of the Goose Creek and the Elevate Creek Association.